The Fairly Odd Parents is an old Nickelodeon show. I think it's still on, that it runs sometimes, but it was mostly popular in the early 2000s about a kid named Timmy Turner who has magical fairy godparents that grant wishes for him. And in this episode, School's Out the Musical, he first wishes that children could run society because he was sick of adults setting curfews and worrying all the time about kids' safety in the town. In order to combat that, in order to offer the parents a safe option, Flappy Bob, a businessman who has, as you'll see, the heart of a clown because he was given up for adoption by his clown parents, offers the adults the option to send their kids to his learning camp. But as Timmy asks, after the pixies, the rival to the fairies, give Flappy Bob the option to shape the world exactly in his image, Timmy asks a very important question. Where is the fun, essentially, in capitalism? Take a look.
But I gave you the pen!
Forget it, kid. I know who my friends are, and I'm signing that contract!
The pixies are Flappy Bob's friends, according to him. They would never go against his interest. So he's shaping the world in his image, and it turns out their image, but he doesn't know that. He doesn't know he's being manipulated yet. So Timmy is about to break into song now to explain to him how dangerous this is, because there is no fun in big business interest, and by extension, there's no fun in capitalism.
Wait! Hey, Flappy Bob, can't you see what they've done? They made it a pond, and clearly you were the one. They took away your clowny clothes, your floppy shoes and big red nose. Just look around, how could you say this is fun? Since you were born, they decided your fate. From the style of your car, down to the foods that you ate. I know it seems they gave a lot, but I'm telling you it's part of a plot that you can stop. Stop it before it's too late.
Hey, Flappy Bob, you hear what he been spreading? The lies that he been telling? I know where this is heading.
Turning you against us.
To resenters, as the gents. Yeah, don't you be forgetting it was you, Flappy Bob.
Yeah, you were the one.
We protected,
And respected.
as though you were our son.
And now you're in the middle.
You can fiddle with this riddle,
You can sign this different track.
that your wishes will be done.
Where is the fun?
Who should I turn to?
Where's the fun?
How can I learn who?
Who is the one?
The one I can trust to tell me what's fun.
Where is the fun?
Why should I trust you?
He was the one.
You were the one who wanted to shun everything I always thought fun.
Hey, Fluffy Bob, can't you see in your heart? There's a role you play, and dude, this just ain't the right part. I know my actions weren't ideal, but how your clowny parents feel about the path you chose, whether or not it was smart. Where is the fun?
Who should I turn to?
Where is the fun?
How can I learn who?
Who is the one?
The one I can trust to tell me what's fun.
Where is the fun?
I'm so conflicted.
He was the one.
The one who restricted.
Your vision of fun.
And with this pen I'll sign, but I'm item one.
No!
Maybe you're right, would be a giant mistake. But changing my life so is I'm not ready to take. This nose, pants, hair, and shoes, they're all my past, and now I choose to wish for a world that fits all my views. A world where I'm safe, it's over, Turner, you lose. Thanks for the pen.
For a second, let's just reflect on the fact that Timmy Turner is a 10-year-old child, and these adult businessman, magical creature type things are intent on defeating a 10-year-old child, as if it were a battle with him. It's weird. Okay, let's break this down piece by piece.
Hey, Flappy Bob, can't you see what they've done? They needed a pawn, and clearly you were the one.
The pawn in this metaphor being the apologists for the capitalist class. Anyone who is not part of the ruling class or a smaller member of the ruling class below the hierarchy of the big bourgeois is the petit bourgeois. Anyone who is either a worker who upholds capitalism or a small business owner is a pawn to the big bourgeois, in this case, the pixies, who want to rule the earth and fairy world.
They took away your clowny clothes, your floppy shoes and big red nose. Just look around, how could you say this is fun?
Capitalism does not exist to cater to the creative spirits of the population. It exists to make a profit for its own sake. It exists to dominate for the sake of dominating. It exists to control for the sake of controlling. The pixies wanted control, they found a pawn to make control and do their bidding for them. And it was in Flappy Bob's creative spirit to be a clown, but capitalism, or in this case the pixies, would not allow him to do that, because the pixies run on boring, and so does capitalism, as it turns out.
Since you were born, they decided your fate. From the style of your car, down to the foods that you ate. I know it seems they gave a lot, but I'm telling you it's part of a plot that you can stop. Stop it before it's too late.
This deals with what the social theorist and linguist Professor Noam Chomsky calls manufacturing consent. The mass of the population does not have the option to gather perspective on opinions beyond what is presented to him as acceptable. So there is a spectrum of acceptable debates, also called an Overton window after someone named Overton, of what is an acceptable opinion to have. And if you fall outside those parameters, you're deemed a radical and unreasonable, and you are not paid attention to, because the capitalist class does not benefit from that. So you can only see what you're shown, and capitalism does in fact cater the style of your car and the foods you eat depending on how much money you have, and depending on how much you're willing to be exploited, and depending on how much you are able to be exploited, because not everyone has a job. Now, Flappy Bob does seem to lead a comfortable life because the pixies take care of him, but that says even more that there are sinister capitalist interests in paying your workers even a living wage, because they don't seem to notice the exploitation that's going on around them. Some people are forced to do their jobs because if they don't, they won't be able to live. And in Flappy Bob's case, he was always taught that dull and boring were fun. I want you to take a look at this right here, because this is essentially what capitalism is. The pawn being the working class, you wait until their adulthood, until they're marketable enough to be exploited or exploit. They take over other class interests, in this case the fairies. They dominate the world by exploiting the working class. This, in an image, is capitalism. And they're saying it right here.
Hey, Flappy Bob, You hear what he been spraying? The lies that he been telling? I know where this is heading.
Towards turning you against us.
To resent us as the chicks.
Who are the villains?
Yeah, don't you be forgetting. It was you, Flappy Bob.
Yeah, you are the one.
We protected
And respected.
as though you were our son.
And now you're in the middle.
You can fiddle with this riddle.
Or you can sign this Dylan Dracula.
That your wishes will be done.
This stanza is essentially the capitalist class saying to someone sympathetic to the capitalist class that once a radical gets to you, they're going to have to appeal to you and say, look at all the luxury that capitalism is giving you. Look at all the freedom it's giving you. Look at all the comfort you have because of capitalism. But when you realize that you could have had that comfort by controlling your life on your own. You would have been responsible for your own destiny. The capitalist class is going to have to fight back with propagandists, and that they're protecting you, even though it has been revealed that the Pixies are only in the interest of dominating the world for their own sake, not for the good of their adopted son, not for any child, and not for any other adults, not for any humans, just for control of Fairy World and the rest of the world. And this is what capitalists say to the working class, that they're looking out for them by maintaining their ownership. As some of you might realize, this is a crock of shit. And Flappy Bob will realize that because he was being used by them. The Pixies used Flappy Bob. So, it's all bullshit for the capitalist class to tell you that they're looking out for your best interest when they are the ones in control and not you. If they were looking out for your interest, they would give up control. But no capitalist willingly gives up control. So, you have to take it from them. The next sequence is essentially a radical trying to tell a liberal the benefits of taking control of your own life and your own destiny and following your own passions by letting go of big business capitalist interests and basically setting it free, taking control of your own life, not letting anyone else control you or tell you what fun is. But it's hard, even if you know that it would be in your interest and your friend's interest for your friend to understand that overthrowing capitalism would give you the best chance of controlling your own life. It's still hard for someone in Flappy Bob's position to trust the radical. In this case, Timmy Turner. Take a look.
Where is the fun?
Who should I turn to?
Where's the fun?
How can I learn who?
Who is the one?
The one I can trust to tell me what's fun.
Where is the fun?
Why should I trust you?
He was the one.
You were the one who wanted to shun everything I always thought fun.
You can think of this as someone basically asking a liberal. They're radical, they're asking a liberal, what's freedom? Taking control of your life or having the ability to control other people's lives as long as you're willing to be subjected to that same control and work your way up. It's an easy answer that to take control of your own life as quickly as possible is the most free. But it is very understandable that someone who's been taught that capitalism and freedom are the same thing, that they would feel hostile to someone trying to abolish capitalism, because in their minds, taking control and abolishing capitalism, even if it would be in your own interest to do so, even though you don't realize that, is against freedom. There were some slaves in the Civil War era who fought to keep slavery because they had a comfortable life, and a life without slavery is a new life that they wouldn't know how to navigate in. It's pretty much the same thing here. You take away what someone thinks is fun and thinks is free and thinks is allowing their control of their own destiny, even though it isn't, even though they're required for someone else to control their own destiny because that's what they think fun is, dull and boring, the opposite of fun, and that's what people think capitalism is, freedom, the opposite of control, even though it's control, that's what they think. So it's understandable that Flappy Bob would be hostile here to Timmy trying to take away his fun, even though he's trying to take away the opposite of fun, dull and boring.
Hey, Flappy Bob, can't you see in your heart? There's a role you play, and dude, this just ain't the right part. I know my actions weren't ideal, but how you clowny parents feel about the path you chose, whether or not it was smart. Where is the fun?
Who should I turn to?
Where is the fun?
How can I learn who?
Who is the one?
The one I can trust to tell me what's fun.
You're definitely not actually going to be contributing anything to society when you work at a stock exchange.
Where is the fun?
I'm so conflicted.
But he was the one.
The one who restricted.
Your vision of fun.
And with this pen I'll sign, but I'm item one.
No!
The second any class-conscious working-class member of society gets another working-class member of society to think critically about the capitalist society in which they live, the capitalists must do their job and utterly crush dissent.
Maybe you're right, could be a giant mistake. But changing my life so is I'm not ready to take. This nose, pants, hair, and shoes, they're all my past, and now I choose to wish for a world that fits all my views. A world where I am safe, it's over, Turner, you lose. Thanks for the pen.
Flappy Bob, later in the episode, eventually joins Timmy's side and defeats the Pixies and brings things back to normal, as close as normal can be, as close as free can be. Of course, a for-profit show is only going to go as far as liberalism. But I digress. That, unfortunately, this is a common path. Someone may concede that the world might be better under a more egalitarian, direct democratic society, and it might be better for people to have control over their own lives. But control that someone is not used to is scary. Control that someone isn't used to exercising is something that they're not going to easily trust themselves to be able to do. To overthrow the current order of society is going to ask people to give up the comforts and security that they are used to if they are in a privileged position. And Flappy Bob is in a privileged position. If everyone else becomes just as comfortable as he is, he'll have to work harder. He'll have to start over. He'll have to be a part of a new society. He'll have to learn what fun is on his own without influence from the Pixies. So I wanted to do this video to set aside the notion in that things are not always going to be formal, theoretical, and academic. But they can just talk about the control that people have to live their own lives in the most fun way they can. So you can talk about control of the means of production. You can talk about the bourgeois and the proletariat. You can talk about the labor theory of value. You can talk about modes of production. You can talk about exploitation. You can talk about any other thing that goes into capitalism, including, on a worldwide scale, imperialism that makes first world countries more comfortable and less willing revolt in some circumstances until they are incredibly desperate. And that will happen. You can talk about all these things. You can talk about how capitalism is unsustainable. You can talk about how it's destroying the planet. You can talk about how it's destroying the lives of people without health care, and it's giving people unnecessary stress in their lives. But you can set aside all that for 1 second and just ask one very simple question about capitalism. Where is the fun? Thanks for watching. I'm Jeremy Einminder for Democratize the Media. Keep fighting. It's our turn now.